Good day. Ceasefire has been compiling a database in the past couple of years on South Africa's arms exports to other countries. Today I have on the line with me Rob Thompson from Ceasefire to tell us more about their findings. Good day, Rob. Now, could you give us a brief history of what you've been doing and what finding it's led you to?
Basically, we spent 3.5 years getting information out of the National Conventional Arms Control Committee. And with that information and information from other sources, we've compiled a database of our exports to other countries, arms exports. And the two things we focused on today were two things that come out of the database we've developed. The first is the lack of application of the criteria in the Conventional Arms Control Act by the Conventional Arms Control Committee, particularly regarding human rights and conflict, but also regarding other things like development and respect for arms control in the recipient country. Things like that, those criteria, the Conventional Arms Control Committee has failed to apply. There are certain major problem countries that we highlighted: India, United Arab Emirates, Algeria, Colombia, and Saudi Arabia. These are amongst the top 10 countries to whom we export arms. They all have human rights problems, and three of them, India and Algeria and Colombia, have conflict problems too. So there's no way we should be selling arms to those countries. But the problem is much more widespread. There are about 58 countries that we've sold arms to in the last 10 years that we shouldn't have sold arms to. For every criterion in the Act, there were at least 6 recipient countries that failed it. And we sold over 13 billion rands of arms to these countries, and 60% of those arms comprised sensitive weapon systems. So those are the issues relating to the criteria that are not being applied.
So what does this mean for South Africa?
Well, it means that we're participating in undermining the criteria for responsible participation in an arms industry. We're part of the problem and not part of the solution.
Now, certainly there are international repercussions. What are they?
Yes, there are, because if we don't apply adequate controls, then we'll be labeled as poor arms control countries, for example, by the European Union, and they won't want to deal with us. That's a direct repercussion. The more indirect repercussion is that we're fueling human rights abuses. We're condoning bad control of the weapons. We are failing to respect other countries' ban, like the European Union embargoes against other countries. All of these things, we're not being responsible in our application of the criteria laid down in the Arms Control Act. Now, so that was the one issue we focused on. The other one was the transparency issues. You know, as I said, we struggled for 3.5 years to get this information out of the Conventional Arms Control Act, information that we should have had in the first place. And they label documents secret. They report blandly as if there's no issues. There's no policy requirement. They give the minimum information required. In some instances, they don't even give the information that is required in terms of the Act. The returns to the United Nations Register of Arms Transfers are incomplete because of commercial interests of buyers. Things like that. So there are huge problems with transparency, and the whole Act is supposed to foster transparency. The reason why we've got an Act is that arms are not potatoes. We need transparency to foster confidence in the countries that we trade with, particularly with our neighbours. You know, confidence building requires transparency. Parliament must hold National Conventional Arms Control Committee accountable, both for its adherence to the criteria in the Act and for its transparency.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
That's Rob Thompson from Ceasefire.